All right, I'm ready. You can dive right in, Craig, and do the intro, and then we'll start the interview.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Oh, come on, Craig. This is taking forever.
Hello, it is Saturday, October 8th, 2016, and this is episode 26 of Due for a Win, the Atlantic City and Casino Biz podcast. My name is Craig Stone. With me is Kyle Askin.
Howdy.
And we have a very special guest today, Dr. David G. Schwartz, the director of the Center for Gaming Research at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. You probably recognize him from the Vegas Gang podcast, Vegas7.com, or any of his many books on gambling history, including Roll the Bones, Grandissimo, Tales from the Pit, and of course Boardwalk Playground, which covers Atlantic City. So we just wanted to have you on, Dave, to discuss Taj Mahal, not only because you're really one of the foremost authorities on casino and gambling history and podcast inspiration to both Kyle and I, but also because you,
thank you.
Actually worked at the Taj, right, as a security person for a bit. So we're very happy to have you on. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I just wanted to jump right in to a little bit of your background. You were actually growing up in Atlantic City during the initial casino boom, right?
Yeah.
So was that a strange transition? Was it, what was it like in the town at that point?
Well, when you're a kid, you think everything is natural and you think it's that way everywhere. So my earliest memories were before they had casinos, but I was really little, so I don't remember too much. I kind of remember the openings. I remember them blowing up a lot of the old hotels, which of course I thought was really cool. And then building new casinos, which, I don't know, I guess I was an architecture critic. I wasn't that impressed by. Although, like some of them, I remember the Tropicana had these glass elevators you could go up in, even though I wasn't a guest of the hotel. You could kind of sneak, and Trump Plaza too had these glass elevators, so that was really cool. I guess when you're, 8, 9 years old, it's really entertaining.
Yeah, the Trop still has those elevators.
It's like, hey, let's go down and ride in the elevator. So yeah, that's maybe I'm cheating my kids. Maybe I should take them for a ride in a glass elevator instead of going to Discovery Museum and parks and stuff.
So back, I guess, in the late 70s, when this was all happening, do you think that were most people in the town kind of excited for the new economic prospects that the casinos were going to bring in, or was there some sense that, maybe Atlantic City would be losing something with the casinos coming in?
No, pretty much everybody felt like they had nothing to lose. The city had declined so much that there was pretty much nobody was against it because there really wasn't anywhere else to turn. So everybody was behind it, as far as I know.
So do you think that, was it you growing up in Atlantic City that led you think, to sort of getting into gaming or the history of gaming as a career? I mean, do you think that led to where you are today?
Oh yeah, absolutely, totally. So I worked in a couple casinos, as you talked about. When I went to college, I wasn't totally sure what I wanted to do, but I kind of got the idea, hey, it would be cool to teach college because this looks like a pretty good lifestyle. So I went to grad school, and then I found out that, you have to write a dissertation on a subject. So I'm looking around, and I found out, hey, there has not been a lot of history written about casinos. And wow, what a great wide open field. So I wrote my dissertation on the history of casinos. And then after I got my PhD, went in the job market and found out there's a very good reason why people don't write a lot of stuff about the history of casinos. Because it is not the guaranteed way to get a job in 21st century academia, for better or for worse.
So is UNLV like one of the few places that actually has sort of a center? I mean, obviously it makes sense for UNLV to have that as opposed to some other towns.
There's a lot of places that have more of the management aspect of it.
Right.
What we're trying to do at UNLV and the university libraries is collect material to support the humanities and social sciences looking into gambling, not just the teaching people how to manage hotels, but looking at the impacts of casinos and gambling in history. Thinking that we have books going back to the 16th century talking about gambling, that kind of puts it all in perspective.
So,
Okay.
Going back to
Go ahead, Fred.
AC, is there anything that you feel like you miss or that you wish you could have experienced from pre-casino Atlantic City?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, well, let me kind of break this down. There are so many periods where the city was different. It would have been great to have seen it when it was first developing back in the 1850s and 1860s. It would have been really neat to see that first boom time in the 1890s and 1900s. But I think I really would have liked to seen it in the 50s when it was kind of declining a little bit, but you had a lot of great stuff happening. 500 Club happening, Club Harlem happening, a lot of nationally known, internationally known entertainers coming in. Frank Sinatra doing his gigs at the Five. That's where Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis got together for the first time. So I really wish I could have been there for that. That would have been fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting because I think people kind of think of the 20s, the Boardwalk Empire sort of period as the peak, and then after the sort of camp boardwalk kind of as the decline. But like you mentioned in the book, in Boardwalk Playground, there was a lot of cultural stuff going on in the 50s, in the late 40s and in the 50s.
Yeah, and the thing is, and that's when my grandparents were kind of at their peak, and they were in the middle of decline, and you never got the sense that they knew it, because it seemed like things were going on, even though the jobs were drying up and stuff. And what's amazing to me too, looking at it in retrospect, is how quickly the city turned around. So into the 50s, it was considered this is a really cool vacation place, convention place. And by the middle 60s, it was totally different. It was, oh my God, the city's falling apart. It's amazing to think that can happen in 10 years. When you think of how, especially comparing it to Las Vegas, how much that's changed in the last 10 years, you see it could have gone the other way.
Yeah. I mean, just to touch briefly, it seems like similarly, it was a really shockingly fast transition. I mean, obviously I didn't know anything about it at the time, but since I wasn't alive, but from World War II, where it was used as basically a training ground for soldiers to get back into private hands and really become a resort again.
Yeah, and they were, Atlantic City's always been very good at changing. That's one thing that I think people forget. And one of the things about, I guess, gambling history, but probably all history, is that people think that the way things have been for the past 5 years is the way that they've always been and they're always going to be. So people just got into the idea of, people only come to Atlantic City to play quarter slot machines or, I guess, multi-denom slot machines and penny slots. And, that's all they'll do, so we have to support that and nothing else. When, in fact, they've come to Atlantic City for a lot of different reasons. And they will probably in the future come for other reasons, not just to play slot machines.
So one of the places that has sort of done very well and very poorly in different portions of its history and in sort of doing that job of trying to get people to come and play multi-denomination slot machines is the Taj Mahal, which obviously is now scheduled to close on Monday, so very close here, which is a big part of why we wanted to have you on. Can you just tell us a bit about how you first came to work at the Taj Mahal and just what it was like when you were there?
Yeah, so this was around the time, so pretty much in the summers I always worked, usually 2 jobs. I worked for the Ventnor City Beach Crew in the mornings, and I usually worked an afternoon or evening job. So for a while it was the Monaco Motel in Ventnor, the finest hospitality location in Ventnor, New Jersey, which is no longer there, unfortunately. And, so I wanted to get another job. And I said, I want to work at the coolest casino there is. And that, at the time, this is 1994, this was the Taj. So I applied. It was amazing. I had to write an essay in the application about why do you want to work here, which is, kind of funny. You wouldn't think that you'd have to have I don't even know why they would have people write an essay. But I read an essay about it. And by the way, the answer is always because you want to help people. That's why. Which I did, so it didn't really have any skills. So I figured, well, I'll do security because that's pretty much standing around and talking to people. So I did that, applied for that, got that job. And it was I really enjoyed it. It was really good. Started out just working on the floor, eventually worked my way up, and I did the life safety monitor dispatching for a while when I was up in security command. So I got to know that pretty well. And it was, I'll kind of share this. I guess I can now that the place is going out of business, but I moved into command on grave shift. And I was like 20, 21. And at one point, I'm in command, which is where everything's going on, which is like the security command center, meaning that if somebody calls in a bomb threat or something, we have to evacuate the whole building or whatever. And my supervisor goes out to smoke. One guy goes out to have his lunch, which is what they call it, no matter what time it is, even if it's 2 a.m. The other guy falls asleep. And here I am, I'm 21 years old, and I'm the only person in charge of this whole security system for this $1 billion resort. And that was when it hit me that I'd become an adult and I had to be responsible. It was weird. It's a really weird feeling.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I'm like, my God, I'm the only person here. I could evacuate this entire place if I wanted to. I don't believe they left me here. Do they know that I'm here? Why are they? How could they give me this responsibility? Oh my God! But it was cool. That was pretty cool.
So
and then I went to grad school, and I worked there through my senior year at Penn, and then over that summer, then I went off to grad school. After grad school, like I said, didn't do so well with the job market for the history department jobs. So with the advanced degree, I got a job in the surveillance department and did that for about a year. Then I went to UNLV, where I still am today, along with Vegas 7 and anywhere else.
So I think because me and Craig are slightly younger, we both didn't turn 21 until 2004. And at that point, Taj was already kind of on its downswing, if not already pretty far down the list of casinos. But I think for a lot of people, like you said, Taj was kind of the place to be in the 90s. I mean, do you agree that that was the nicest casino in the 90s in Atlantic City?
Yeah, and people were really, this is also kind of, I would say the Taj, probably the two most important institutions in my life in shaping me to the whatever I am now are Atlantic City High School and the Trump Taj Mahal.
Mm-hmm.
Because I learned more there than I probably did in college, and just kind of just getting to experience that was such a big thing. And it was a really exciting place to work. It was great. Anything could happen. We had celebrities in there all the time. I did it might have been Mickey Mantle's last public appearance. So it was like pretty much, you meet Muhammad Ali, met him, lots of people. Huey Lewis. So I'll go all Patrick Bateman on you here. Huey Lewis reference. Yeah, he was like a nice guy. He was a really nice guy. So yeah, it was really exciting when I was there. So I was there in 94, 95, came back for a while in 98, and then came back in 2000 and left in early 2001. Mm-hmm. When I was there, it was still the top revenue producing casino in the city. So.
Right. Yeah, it was until we actually, in our first episode ever, which is like a year ago, we were talking about the history, and I think, until 2002 or something it was, and then Bally's was for a couple of years, and then Borgata opened and sort of took over everything.
Because Bally's absorbed the Claridge, which bumped them up, and then Borgata opened and just, woof.
I know. Well, and it's still like that today. So,
yeah.
But back then, I mean, how did the Taj compare to, casinos in Vegas? Because it was built right around the same time as the Mirage was built, maybe a year or two later, and Mirage was kind of seen, I think, as the first new kind of mega resort in Vegas that kind of kicked everything off there. So how did the Taj really compare to the casinos that were in Vegas at the time?
This could be an article in and of itself. Mirage cost, I think, $620 million.
Mm-hmm.
Taj, reportedly, Trump said that it cost $1.1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
And Mirage had 3,000 rooms. Taj had 1,000 rooms. So that kind of gives you an idea right there. The Mirage just clearly had way more stuff. I mean, they had their own rainforest. We, at the Taj, we had Kukuru, which is a chicken place. It's like, it's not really a rainforest. It really couldn't compete, is what I'm trying to say very politely. It's a big casino hotel complex, but it just does not compare to the Mirage, because the Mirage was just a totally different animal. It's amazing to me too that, I guess it's not amazing, this tells you why the Taj had so many financial problems, that Steve Wynn and Bobby Baldwin building the Mirage had to kind of scrape around to get the funding for it from Wall Street, and people were really skeptical, but they did it, and it was great. They really were vindicated. You can kind of understand that, and it's kind of hard for me to see, well, I guess this is why the Taj, having to get about twice as much money, had to pay such high interest rates that it ended up in bankruptcy. So,
right.
Yeah, I don't know.
So obviously with, the election going on now and Donald Trump's history in the city, sort of, the story of the Taj's opening has been dredged up in mainstream newspapers over the last several months. But at the time, was it kind of big news about how highly leveraged the Taj really was? Was it covered? Were people concerned about the amount of leverage that had gone into it and the interest rates? Or were people just kind of excited about it opening and didn't think that, it would basically have to declare bankruptcy so quickly after it opened?
Some people were excited, but if you look at the newspapers at the time, which I've gone back and looked at them, and they've all got people warning, saying, well, other people aren't so bullish. And there's in every article somebody saying, well, yeah, that's leveraging it pretty heavily. Donald Trump was the boy wonder behind Central Park and getting the skating rink fixed there, and Trump Tower and all this other stuff. He'd opened Trump Plaza in Atlantic City. That had done pretty well. He'd opened the Castle, which Hilton had built. So he just had this reputation as somebody who could get stuff done. And they figured, well, he'll get it done. So I think that was the prevailing mood. But he was also he really put his stamp in Atlantic City. And growing up, every time I looked in that direction, I looked downtown, you would see Trump's name in huge 30-foot high letters. So it's kind of an all, I don't know, it's kind of like the Eye of Sauron or something, like an all-pervading presence there. Just imagine that when you grow up, every time you look in the sky, you see Trump huge. It's just a huge presence in the city, and it's kind of hard for me to believe that after 30 years, it's going to be gone. There will be no more Trump in giant red letters in the sky.
It's interesting because I think when Kyle and I, by the time we had started going, there was Trump Plaza that was kind of in disrepair. Trump Marina was probably the worst thing going in Atlantic City. And then the Taj was hanging on and doing okay, but not great. And so the Trump name had really sort of declined in Atlantic City. So it's almost funny for us, I think, to think about there was a time when that was the name in casino gaming in Atlantic City, because it had almost become sort of a joke. I don't know if you agree with that, Kyle, but
I mean, I wouldn't say it was a joke, but certainly those three properties were, by the time we were starting to go to Atlantic City, were not the nicest properties anymore. I mean, Taj was still probably very nice, but once Borgata opened, I feel like that it kind of took everything to the next level. Kind of was this big specter kind of over the rest of the casinos in Atlantic City, which I think it still is to a degree. So I guess the next question, like in the 90s and sort of the early 2000s, I think are kind of seen as the golden age of at least gaming in Atlantic City. I mean, I think famously, and correct me if I'm wrong, Craig or Dr. Dave, but I think that for a long time, Atlantic City was actually out-earning Las Vegas in gaming revenue throughout that time.
From 1983 to 1999.
So what was the city really like then? I mean, was it really just gaming, and that was really what the Atlantic City casinos were about, whereas, Las Vegas tried to have other attractions there and other things, or was there sort of more to do in the city in the 90s than just gamble?
Well, for most of the people who came, it was just gamble, and I
Hmm.
talked about this all the way back in my dissertation, which became Suburban Xanadu. They weren't tourists; they were commuters. They
Hmm.
would come there either by car or by bus, gamble, and then go home. So which to me was one of the mistakes of the way they designed the casinos, which goes back to the legislation. Why you want them to be these big slot boxes is beyond me. And it seems that the designs now, now they're integrated resorts and urban resorts and all this other stuff. And now it seems like they're much more willing to be open to the rest of the community and have people coming out. Here's my example. If you look at what was the Golden Nugget and then was Bally's Grand,
Yep.
the Grand, Atlantic City Hilton, ACH Atlantic Club, that whole frontage is just that glass wall.
Yep.
Okay, that's what pretty much everything was like. Bally's was like that. Tropicana was mostly like that, except for the place where the peanut shop was, where I had my Mr. Peanut gig for one summer. But now it seems like they've gone beyond that. Tropicana, I love what they've done. Pretty much that whole boardwalk frontage is all opened up.
Hmm.
And you can get in there. So that's, I feel if they had done that 35 years ago, it would be the city would have developed a lot differently. And to me, that was the big mistake, was not embracing the surroundings.
Right. And I think a lot of people have kind of come to that conclusion that the city's real downfall is that they just were milking the gaming aspect of it as much as they could. And then, of course, as the neighboring states and the areas around the East Coast started allowing gambling, that kind of was the undoing, because Atlantic City was seen as just a place to gamble. And then when you have a casino that's closer to you, people are going to stop going.
Which is screwed up. Here's why, okay? So I was just back there with my family 2 weeks ago. We went dolphin watching, and we're out there for 2.5 hours. It was down in Cape May. If you want to Google that, the Cape May dolphin watching. I forget the name of the company, but they were really cool. 2.5 hours for a family of four was like $80 for 2.5 hours out, looking at dolphins and going around and getting a history lecture about the Cape May area. It's like incredible. There is no amount of money you could pay to see dolphins in their natural habitat where they should be in Las Vegas. It is not possible. And it boggles my mind that you wouldn't try to play up that kind of stuff that you can do. You can frickin' go surfing. In Atlantic City, you can go surfing. Again, there is no amount of money you could pay to surf in ocean surf in Las Vegas. And it just boggles my mind that they did not try to market around that. Hey, let's do like Bodie and Point Break thing and hire some burnout dude to be a surf instructor, and have a concierge to offer that service to the guests and that kind of stuff. Like, why didn't people try that?
So how much of that do you think is because of sort of the greed or incompetence or whatever of the casino executives just looking at, what's the best way I can make short-term profits, which at the time was just put more slot machines in because they were the only game in town on the East Coast? And how much of that is maybe because of, the graft and corruption and incompetence that's kind of traditionally seen with the local government in Atlantic City, which is, I guess, most famous in the 1920s because of Boardwalk Empire, but, has certainly gone up through this era in the 1990s. I mean, plenty of people were arrested in government then as well. So,
yeah, I was thinking about this too. It's kind of funny that, and of course the city just defaulted, which isn't funny, but the funny thing to me is that, okay, the city's gimmick is that it's really corrupt. That's kind of the gimmick. Like, hey, Boardwalk Empire, really corrupt. So is anybody surprised that there's been financial impropriety? It's like, oh my, how could that happen? The place with the gimmick that it's corrupt is, inept at finances. Wow, who could have seen that happening? I'm shocked. I think part of it's that. Part of it is, I wouldn't call it, it's not necessarily greed. It's just that people buy, it's a couple things. Number one, people want to get in on the bubble, and it's exactly what we see in Las Vegas with pizza places, burger places, all
Nightclubs,
that,
whatever.
nightclubs, where, oh, they have a nightclub. Let's add a nightclub. Let's have a pizza place. Let's have
Right.
everybody does it. There's not a lot of originality. And when the guy down the street from you is making a lot of money with the quarter slot machines, you feel pretty stupid if you're not making a lot of money with the quarter slot machines. And everybody's demanding, like, yes, do that. So it's not like I can't say this president of the property is a terrible, greedy man because he did this. Well, no, he's just doing what he's being paid to do, which is try to maximize the return to the shareholders. And you don't get rewarded for doing risky things that are going to happen later. Las Vegas was lucky where you had people like Steve Wynn and Sheldon Adelson who could say, no, this is my vision, this is what we're going to do, and did it. Steve Wynn did that to an extent in Atlantic City. Steve Wynn could have built something like the Mirage in Atlantic City, but he got chased out by the regulators in 1987.
Right.
He had the land. And I've talked to his architects. There were plans to build, and they ended up doing the Mirage.
I know that even to this day, people will ask Steve Wynn in interviews and about his time in Atlantic City and with the original Golden Nugget, which you were talking about, and he places. I mean, for him, he places all the blame on the city government and the state government and the greed and the corruption and all that.
Yeah. And so that's part of it, is just short-sightedness. Other part, I think, is it's very provincial. The people running the casinos there are very provincial. They think that they know everything and that nobody else has any ideas to contribute. So you wouldn't see a lot of people, and this is probably more into the 90s. Obviously in the 70s, nobody was from Atlantic City running that. But a lot of the people running the casinos, when I was there into the 2000s, they just had the attitude that they knew better than everybody else. So I remember Sun International came in, Saul Kersner, who built Sun City in South Africa, which was one of the things that influenced Steve Wynn with the Mirage. So this is a guy who knows casinos. And the attitude that people had is, well, he's going to have to hire some local people because he doesn't know anything about how the business really works. And he's been running a multi-billion-dollar company all over the world, multiple jurisdictions. Besides the whole I'm not going to play Sun City thing, which you probably a little bit before your time.
Yeah.
Just Google Artists United Against Apartheid Sun City. You'll see it was a huge video thing in the 80s, really big. So people were really provincial, and you didn't have a lot of people coming with other ideas from other cities, which I think hurt them because anybody from out of town is going to see wow, this is incredible. Wow, there's a lot of really cool real estate right off the boardwalk, and it's kind of dilapidated housing. What if we bought that and tried to get something going? And, wouldn't people like to live a couple blocks away from the beach? I don't know, man. Didn't do it.
It's pretty shocking that hasn't come to pass yet. I mean, I guess the argument would be just that there's so many surrounding beach towns in New Jersey. So, why would you start at the one that's kind of in the worst shape, arguably? But just as far as the natural advantages it has, like you mentioned, it's pretty incredible that hasn't really happened yet.
And it's really convenient. I mean, you can be in Philadelphia in an hour. I mean, literally in somebody's office in an hour and a half from Atlantic City. New York in about 2.5 hours. So it's really, I mean, it's just the infrastructure to me is mostly there. Obviously not the airport part, but I don't know. I think the problem is that just the taxes are so high. There's not the idea that, hey, we need to encourage people to come here and start businesses and stuff. I think that's a big problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess to wrap up our conversation on the history of the gaming in Atlantic City and the Taj. So what was your reaction? Obviously, you have a long history with the Taj. What was your reaction when you heard that it finally was going to go out of business, I guess, in 2 days from now? I mean, were you surprised? What do you think that's going to do to Atlantic City? Because I think you can argue that maybe for the people who've been there, they'll say, you know, what do you think of when you think of Atlantic City? They could say the Borgata or Caesars or something like that. But I think for at least most people who haven't been there, I mean, the Taj still might be the most recognizable casino name in Atlantic City.
It's really devastating. It's depressing. Honestly, everything that's happened in Atlantic City in the last 3 years, yeah, it's really depressing. It's got me to really reconsider a lot of how I think of the casino industry. Just because when I was growing up, this was the savior. This was this great business that was going to save the city and pump life into it and create jobs. And well, it did, but then it didn't. So just really got me thinking a lot harder than I think I did before.
So have you heard any of the rumors about possibly reopening? I mean, I know New Jersey just attempted to pass or at least propose some legislation kind of saying that can't happen, but
which is okay. This is what is wrong. This is what is wrong with New Jersey and Atlantic City. Number one, 1992, they could have passed sports betting. They didn't because they're idiots. There's no other explanation.
Yep.
No, we don't want that. Well, you're guaranteed. Congress is saying if you can do it, you're guaranteed you're going to have a monopoly. You're the only ones in the East Coast with it. Could you imagine? That would have been incredible. Nope, can't. No, don't want to do that. Can't be bothered. No. You know, I've heard rumors that it was the people affiliated with organized crime put pressure in so that they could keep the monopoly. I don't know if that's true. That's what I've heard. But it's just, I don't believe that nobody in the legislature said we need to get this done and got it done. So that's one thing. And I was so distracted, I forgot the original question. I got so distracted by that because I remember thinking there was a second half I was going to say.
Oh, so the original question was about how there are rumors that the Taj, maybe it's just closing short term and it's going to open back up in the spring, and then the state is trying to pass a bill that says that if Carl Icahn closes the Taj, it will not be allowed to reopen for 5 years.
This is what is so shitty about the city, and why this is why they. I feel like I'm a kid in a broken home. Like, this is why Daddy left. This is why they drove Steve Wynn away. You know, stuff like this. All right, well, people are losing jobs, so let's pass a law that makes it harder to reopen a place. You know, the people. It seemed like the people there were more concerned with making a point and making sure that the people inside there, the managers, were suffering than actually trying to save jobs, which is really disturbing. So then when you have the legislature come in and say, we're more concerned with making the people who closed the place suffer than getting the jobs back, that just seems totally nonsensical.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a very strange way to go about it. And it's one of those things that I think it's the kind of legislation that might make sense when the economy is doing very well and Atlantic City is doing very well, because you don't want to sort of have someone have the power to just totally bust a union just because they're making a ton of money and they want to make even more. But when the city's doing poorly, it just seems like a really strange way to go about it.
Yeah. And again, there's so many other barriers. If you've got $500 million to invest in a resort or a casino, there's a lot of other places you could do it with a lot more upside than Atlantic City. And there's a reason why not a lot of people are investing. You know, there's a reason why the Plaza was going to sell for $20 million or something, and then that didn't even go through.
Yeah, I kind of blocked
Showboat
that.
sold for $26 million, I think, and Revel sold for $82 million. So
yeah, you know, so that's the market speaking, and they should listen to that. You know, these are the people who actually have to risk their money. That's what they're saying it's worth. So you can't just legislate, oh no, you can't do that. And that, to me, the other thing, growing up in Atlantic City, it seemed everywhere you went, people would just say, you can't do that, you can't do that. You go out on the boardwalk, and the first thing you see is a big sign with everything you can't do on the boardwalk and the beach, and you can't ride your bike after 10 o'clock. It's like, well, you know, why would you choose to go on vacation there? To have people, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't play ball on the beach. Like, screw you, I'm on vacation. And that's one thing that I think Vegas gets right. Of course, you take it too far in the other direction, you end up getting trick rolled or something. So you don't want to take it too far. But
Right.
it's like, there is something to be said for relaxing the rules a little bit and maybe letting people play ball on the beach.
Well,
Maybe letting people have alcohol on the beach.
right.
You know.
So this summer there was a lot of discussion that maybe they were going to allow alcohol on the boardwalk, but and the city council kind of bandied it about for a bit, but nothing came of it. And it's something that Craig and I have been pushing for a long time. I think it makes perfect sense if it became like, even if you wanted to make it like New Orleans where you have to pour it into a plastic cup or whatever. I mean, it's still, for me, it makes perfect sense for what Atlantic City is, and I think it could only help it. I mean, it would help get people kind of out onto the boardwalk instead of now. I think a lot of people just, go to a casino, stay at the casino the entire time, go home, which, I mean, it's not bad for the city, but it's not as good as if people are moving around and walking by local businesses and things like that. And just, if they're trying to be this destination town for people from 20 to 35, I mean, I think it's something that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean, it will be good to be able to walk outside, drink a beer, as a responsible adult. Obviously, and and I remember when they first brought the boardwalk, the beach bars in,
Mm-hmm.
people are saying, "Oh, people are going to be vomiting all over the beach." It's like, well, yeah, if they're like 17
Right.
and drinking for the first time, but I don't know. I'm an adult. I'm able to go out and have a beer and not vomit all over the place. I don't think that's gonna, I don't think that's gonna happen. And if it does, then they have laws against being drunk and disorderly to take care of that. I don't think that's kind of which way it's gonna go. And I think that's just a tendency is to try to. It's just too restrictive in so many ways, and that is what has put the city in the situation where it's in today.
And it is a little weird how, for a city that, especially historically, has been built on vice and sort of backroom gambling and that kind of stuff, and now is a gambling town, like, they kind of clutch their pearls quite a bit. Like gambling on or drinking on the boardwalk, people immediately say, oh, no, that's going to lead to other problems. Like, why don't we see if it's going to lead to other problems?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the problem is that there's no jobs because there's not much tourism. Because people don't feel comfortable there because there's not a lot of people around because you're not allowed to drink, grab a beer and take a walk down the boardwalk. So, I mean, to me, having more people out in public is a good thing, which will help the city.
Yeah, I agree.
They won't be
I agree.
vomiting
I mean,
everywhere.
Personally, I have no problem walking down the boardwalk kind of in the middle of the night, but I know a lot of people, including my wife, do not like being on the boardwalk after dark. So, I mean, it's a problem that they need to, it's a perception that exists for people, and it's something they need to get over or get past.
And it's
the city.
Yeah.
It's crazy, though, because it's a beach town. I mean, that's the huge market for a lot of beach towns, after dark on the boardwalk, and AC doesn't really seem to have it.
Yeah, that's weird. And again, it's because the casinos weren't incentivized. Now I think they are. Now they're seeing that. But the problem is always the reason why you have Las Vegas casinos opening themselves up so much is that they know they have 42 million people a year coming here. They're going to spend 2.5 days here, and they decide where they're going to eat at the time that they eat for the most part. So they have a lot of stuff open so people can kind of wander in. That's not what the Atlantic City market is right now. So it's difficult for them to take that approach, but I think they have to take that approach to open the city up and be more successful.
And one of the things you actually mentioned earlier was the sort of design of the casinos on the boardwalk side, and there is something really weird, since I'm coming, from the New York City area, typically not driving around very much in the city and always staying overnight just about when I go, is that I'm always entering the casinos on the boardwalk side. And to me, that's the front of the casino, but they're not designed that way at all. So Bally's especially, you walk in and you feel like you're going in the back door when you're going in from the boardwalk. And that always struck me as really weird. And like you mentioned, Tropicana's starting to do it more where there's stuff on the boardwalk side and it feels like that's actually more welcoming. But so many of the other casinos, it feels like you're sort of sneaking into the entrance you're not even supposed to be going into when that's sort of, the boardwalk is arguably sort of a thoroughfare of pedestrian traffic that should be driving into the casino.
Yeah, which is better than the Las Vegas Strip in a lot of ways. Las Vegas Strip is built as a way to move cars. They've had to spend a lot of money building pedestrian overpasses. It's still not perfect. A lot of the older casinos were designed with setbacks. So that's, and just think about the time that it takes you to get from the Strip into Bellagio, and how you don't have that in Atlantic City if it's done well. I like what they did at Wild Wild West, where they kind of opened it up and put the performance space and had that. That to me, that's what they should be doing. So it's good to see, and it's good to see some people doing the right thing. One of the criticisms I don't like of Atlantic City is saying, well, nobody invested in non-gaming stuff. Some people did. Borgata did, Trop did, Harrah's has. So I think some people have. The problem is you don't have that critical mass that the Strip has. So you haven't had billions of dollars of that investment.
And ironically, the three casinos you mentioned are three of the casinos that are doing the best in Atlantic City. So
there you go. Yeah, and others didn't do well.
Right. I mean, yeah, it seems like at least all the casinos are right on the boardwalk, like you said. It seems like Sands was kind of the last one that was, you had to take the moving sidewalk to get there and the Claridge, but since that's closed, it's nothing like in Las Vegas when you go to like Bally's or something, and it's like a hike to go from the Strip to Bally's or something like that.
Yeah, and that to me, that's one of the great things about Fremont Street is you're in and out, you can wander around. You don't quite have that in Atlantic City because it's just one side of the boardwalk. But you figure people might not just be going into casinos, they might want to go out and, maybe walk on the beach. Maybe do something else fun.
So, just some general AC casino market stuff that we had here. With Taj closing, it'll be down to 7 casinos, although we're assuming that's going to go back up to 8 when 10, which is the former Revel, opens up. Do you think that getting down to 7 actually makes Atlantic City attractive to investors who might be interested in opening another casino property, or does just the regulation and everything that we've talked about just totally disincentivize that?
I think the regulation is going to turn people off. I think they need a totally new regime there just to say that we're trying to solicit investment. And the idea that you're going to shrink the market to success has always boggled my mind. And, granted, I'm probably a little bit too influenced by Las Vegas, and people say, well, everywhere else isn't Las Vegas. But, in Las Vegas, the idea wasn't, because Las Vegas was doing okay in the late 80s. And they didn't say, well, we're going to have a lot of competition coming up from new gaming around the country, so we need to close some casinos. Let's close the Sands and the Dunes, and then maybe Bally's and Caesars can hang on, and they'll survive. That didn't work. You look at Reno, they didn't have a lot of investment, and they've ended up pretty much where Atlantic City is as far as the casino is concerned. So to me, it's you either have to grow, or preferably do both, grow or diversify.
And we've seen, with Caesars, they did the calculus and they said, we are closing Showboat, which is a profitable casino, because we feel like it will help the other 3 properties enough to make up for the difference. So they really just decided that shrinking was better for business in the long run, which is kind of strange. Which
is insane, especially when you're trying to build up. And this is a company that had invested money in a convention center in Harrah's already, all right? Meaning you need more hotel rooms. Meaning, let's not close, 1,000 hotel rooms?
Yeah, in that neighborhood, for sure.
It was really strange, and by all accounts, it seemed to me, and maybe I'm just totally off base here, but Gary Loveman, who was the CEO at the time when this happened, seemed like he was a pretty savvy guy who had a pretty decent idea of what was going on. But I personally didn't agree with the choice either. It seemed like it was just completely a short-term move, not thinking about the long-term at all.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Loveman's legacy is going to be debated for a long time, because if you look at where the company is now, can you honestly say it's in a better place than it was when Phil Satry was running it? Right, with a different approach. I don't know. So that's going to be debated. But
I think the answer is no. But how much of that was because of Loveman, and how much of that was the choice to go private at the absolute worst time you could ever make that decision, and then the big downturn.
It's also the decisions that he made, and the decision he made was we want to really get a lot of exposure to Las Vegas. And this Phil Satry, when he was CEO, turned down a couple of chances to buy properties in the Strip. Loveman comes in and says, no, we won't be exposed to Las Vegas, and then the market tanks. Mm. So it'd be interesting what would have happened if Phil Satry had hung on another 5 years. Harrah's would be a much different company today.
Right. I mean, it's
probably
I think it's
in a better place.
Right. I mean, it's probably something we could actually just do a whole podcast about. It's just super interesting because I think traditionally, like, one of the biggest failings of Loveman, if you talk to a lot of people, is just he had an opportunity to get into Macau and he didn't take it. And, that's traditionally been seen as like maybe the worst thing he did when he was running Caesars. But now, a couple years later, it seems like, well, maybe Macau isn't everything that it seemed like it was going to be in 2013, 2014. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting question, and it's something we could debate forever.
Yeah, well, it's because he completely turned even his own thesis behind the company, which was his whole exploding volcanoes versus propeller head things. That's a talk I heard him give at the International Conference on Gambling and Risk-Taking back in 2000. I think I actually asked him for a job too. Didn't get it, but there's no sour grapes. I'm really glad I didn't, because I really like where I've gone. Other than that, but he was saying, well, no, we don't invest in all that fancy stuff in the Strip, so we can deliver a better experience. We're more in touch with our players. And then it turned to, well, no, we're going to buy 8 properties in the Strip and invest heavily in that. And that, again, people were shocked when that didn't work out.
So we've touched on this a little bit in terms of Atlantic City, just in terms of the non-gaming attractions. Actually, I think we've touched on it a lot. But do you think there's been any, or was there any big proposed project that fell through that could have been a huge game changer in Atlantic City, just in terms of broadening the city's appeal?
Well, there was a lot of things. So first of all, there were never the location of the convention center, whatever they call it now, wasn't always back there where it is at the foot of the expressway. For a while, it was going to be around where the Taj is, and I wrote about this this is in Boardwalk Playground, also in my original Casino Connection article. How originally they had this Fanta City complex, which was going to be resorts, the Showboat, the Taj, Convention Center, other non-gaming hotels. They had a whole plan. In the end, they only got the 3 casinos. If that had gone through, that would have been really different. I think that might have changed the game. I'm trying to think of other ones. There's so many ones that didn't happen.
And you can still see those skywalks, right, connecting those casinos.
Yeah. You imagine what would have happened if MGM had opened up in 1980 or so. The problem was that there was this cash crunch in 79, 80, so a lot of the projects that were planned didn't happen.
Oh, I was saying, in reading Boardwalk Playground, it's crazy how many of the chapters sort of end with, well, this got bought to be some $300 million development, and that just never happened.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's happened a lot, even like kind of since the downturn. I mean, there's, Pinnacle, which was the Sands, which was going to be a huge mega resort. Obviously, the new MGM, which was going to be between Harrah's and Borgata, that was going to be a humongous resort there. That obviously never happened. It's now a parking lot between Harrah's and Borgata. So
the Gateway project there,
right?
That would have been cool.
Sort of down near where Stockton College is going to be built now, was going to be a Hard Rock down at Albany and the Boardwalk.
Which got scared off when Revel opened and shat the bed.
Yeah. But that's on like my tour of depression of Atlantic City. It's like, oh, hey kids. Hey, this used to be where the Monaco was, where I used to work. Hey, this was where my high school used to be. It's a parking lot now. This is the first casino I worked in. That's closed. This is the Taj, where I worked for 3 years. That's that's closing. It's like, ugh, depressing. Right. But the really big missed opportunity, I think, was Steve Wynn coming back to town in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And this we can go back to Donald Trump, because he had to fight him. Instead of doing what they did in Vegas, which was, hey, we're going to make our property better. And sure, they would, they were kind of snarky about it. It's not like they love each other there, but they're not going to fight the competition. I mean, they tied it up in court until eventually Wynn sold the company and it didn't happen. But imagine what would have happened if that thing had opened I might be messing with the timelines right now, but that thing probably would have opened around 99, 2000. Imagine what that would have been like if we had a Steve Wynn, awesome property open up. Then you would have had the Boyd and MGM both build resorts. You probably would have had another wave of development there. So when Pennsylvania legalizes stuff in 2006, you've got mega resorts there already. That would have changed the entire city's trajectory.
And that plan to develop that tract was actually supposed to be 3 casinos, right? It was going to be the Wynn Casino, I think Boyd and Circus were the 3 people in it. And then Mirage buying out, or is it MGM buying out Mirage? Yeah. Kind of put a halt to that because MGM just had too much other stuff going on to deal with Atlantic City at that time.
Yeah, but that's directly because Donald Trump and some other folks too. I think the folks at Bally's too fought it. It's just, and Skip Bronson has a book called The War at the Shore that's about this. He was Wynn's guy there, so it's pretty illuminating to read that book. That's if you're in Atlantic City, I would read that Skip Bronson. Book.
I read that I think last year. It's really the inside politics in that. It's almost not even a casino industry book. It's like a politics and development book. Is really interesting. Kind of the stuff that holds up these developments is pretty crazy.
Yeah, and again, it's just so you're gonna have a smaller piece of a shrinking pie, or you could have a piece of a growing pie. A lot of people would have a smaller piece of a shrinking pie as long as nobody else is growing.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a little bit of the problem with Atlantic City that we've talked about on the podcast is there's so much of the marketing is about trying
to grow your piece of the pie at the expense of everyone else instead of everyone being like, hey guys, we can all just grow the pie and be happier that way.
Right. Like I want to get someone from your casino to my casino in Atlantic City. I don't want to get more people to just come to Atlantic City.
Yeah. Exactly. And, I've said this sounds like a soundbite, so I guess it kind of is. But, the problem for Atlantic City is they always thought the competition was the people down the boardwalk, not the people around the country. Right. And so they never really planned for that.
Right. And the real people who knocked them out were the legislatures in places like Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland.
Yeah. And it was entirely stupid to think that they wouldn't because... Right. If it's that good of a deal and making that much money, do you really think they're going to let Atlantic City keep that? And they're not going to do that? They're such great philanthropists in all those other states. They're let them keep all that money. And they're not going to do that.
I mean, we've seen some of the same thinking with the North Jersey casino referendum where the supporters in the state in New Jersey are saying, we'll get the New York City market. They're going to come here. And if we don't do this, New York City will beat us to it. But it's like New York City's going to do it anyway. So the question is, are you going to have this advantage for 2 years, or are you just not going to have the advantage at all?
Yeah. And, instead, why don't you help Atlantic City diversify, do what casinos were originally supposed to do, which is build up the tourism infrastructure and establish a thriving convention and tourism business.
So have you been following the Revel/10 plans that Glenn Straub has had? I know he said some pretty
Glenn
ridiculous
Straub
stuff.
Saga.
Yeah, I still kind of miss the Ivory Tower for Geniuses idea. I mean, that was different. It's, he seems like a successful creative guy with a lot of ideas. It doesn't seem like they're getting executed. I know they've had a lot of issues. So yeah, I don't know. It's a strange feeling, not necessarily a good feeling.
Yeah, it's been just a strange thing to follow. Where now they've got the press release announcing the name and saying they're going to open in Q1 of 2017, and then he gets interviewed and says, "Oh, I didn't even put out that press release. We hired a management team and or contracted with the management team, and they decided to put out a press release without even consulting me. So that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence. But he's doing some somewhat different things. Ropes courses and bike courses and stuff like that.
Water parks, and
well, allegedly.
Allegedly, yes, he wants to do a water park.
Do you have any sense of optimism at all for 10, or are you totally in wait and see mode?
Wait and see mode. That the name doesn't really set me on fire, but I didn't like the name the D in downtown Las Vegas, but that's a great place, and Derek Stevens runs a great hotel. I also didn't like SLS, and that hasn't done so well in Vegas. So I don't know. It's kind of a stretch. It might be a tough sell, but I hope they're successful. I would rather see them be successful and put people back to work and get people coming to Atlantic City than be right about thinking it's not a great name.
Yeah, I think Kyle and I said on the last episode that at the end of the day, if it's a great place, then people think it's a great name.
Right.
10 is as
and
good
if it's
as
not,
the
then people will be like, of course it's bad. That was a terrible name.
Yeah, or they'll just, I don't think anybody's really in love with the name the D in Vegas, but it's a great casino, so people go there and they really like it. So that's, I don't think the name, the part of the name is important. You think, well, if the Mirage had been called something else, would it be as great? If it was, the Pacific Ambassador or something like that, would it have been such a big deal? Maybe not, but that's a pretty special place. So I think they can make it with that name. It's just that I would like to have seen a name that somehow drew on the architecture, which is pretty distinctive,
right?
Or the surrounding area.
So, what do you think? I think when Revel opened, no one thought it was going to open because of the downturn, and it cost an unprecedented amount of money for the area, and they really seemed to try to go for the high-end market that Borgata's really been the only game in town in Atlantic City. And for me, when I think of the nice casinos in Atlantic City, it's Borgata. And when Revel was open, even though it was empty, I thought it was very, very nice. Do you think that there is room for kind of competition in the high-end market in AC, and do you think that Revel 10, and whatever iteration it's on can be someone that can kind of challenge them for that segment? Or do you think Borgata just has too much of a lead and it's going to really take kind of like something special to knock them out of that market segment?
I think they would need a plan to bring in other people. I do not think they'll be able to take Fly away from Borgata. That didn't work for Revel. I don't think it's going to work for them. I think what they have to do to be successful is find a market that's not being served and serve them and let them know that they are being served here and they want them there. And I think that is their best shot.
I'll just be interested to see what happens because, as you said, Glenn Straub has certainly had some crazy ideas, and he's gotten into a lot of fights with a lot of people. But, on the other hand, I think that, the price he bought that property for, it almost has to be a good deal. And then he got over the biggest hurdle that existed with that property when he actually managed to buy the power company for it for, basically dirt cheap, when the power company was the reason that when Brookfield, which owns Hard Rock in Las Vegas, came in and made an offer and then walked away from it. So I don't know, we'll see what he does. As you said, he seems like a very savvy business guy. Getting the power company is like the biggest coup, and I think no matter what he ends up doing, he can sell that property for a profit now because he has the power company. So I'm just interested to see what's going to happen over the next couple of years with that property, because I think it has a lot of promise. I enjoyed being there every time I was there. So,
and here's the thing too. So if we malign the generations of executives who were too conservative and only wanted to build slots and didn't want to push the envelope, we can't then jump all over a guy who has these out of the box ideas for not building another slot box. So, we have to give people room to fail, to grow, to succeed.
I agree 100%. I think I'm super excited to see what ends up happening with the Revel, and I'm super excited to see sort of whatever Glenn Straub's plan is when it comes to fruition. So do you think that Revel is kind of the last new casino construction we'll see for a while, or do you think that there might be, there's always been rumors of maybe some boutique hotels coming in, like Hard Rock, like I said, down near Albany Avenue, or something similar to that. Do you think that we might see new construction anytime in the near future in Atlantic City, or do you think if there is another casino that opens, it'll probably be in one of the existing spaces that just, like the Taj or like Showboat or whatever that gets refurbished?
Yeah, I think they'd probably do the refurbishing.
Mm-hmm.
Even back when they first proposed that the boutique casino legislation, I ran the number, and there's just so much more. There's so much more upside to doing what Tillman Fertitta did and buying an existing property for pennies in the dollar and refurbishing it than starting from scratch. I penciled it out, and it just didn't work. There was no way it would be profitable to build something new when you could have the old stuff for so much less. And I think that's still going to hold true. If you had some kind of renaissance in the market and it rebounded, then yeah, you might see some new construction, but not until then.
So do you think, just to kind of get into the general questions about grand scheme stuff, do you think there are any lessons really that AC should be taking from Vegas right now, but they're not? Or is AC just a totally different beast than Vegas is at this point?
I think it's a different beast, but I think one of the things they could do better is the marketing of the city. I know they've tried, and that's, you've gotten the Do AC slogan, which does not seem to have set the world on fire. So I think that's one area where Vegas has always been really good, is like, hey, we're going to have people go out to the desert where it's really, really hot in the summer, and they're going to lose money, and they're going to love it and want to come back. And they're really good at getting people to buy into that. I think if I was the Grand Duke or whatever of Atlantic City with an unlimited checkbook, I would try to hire away as many people from the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority as I could, because they seem to know what they're doing in marketing destination. So I think that would be a place that's where they would start.
Yeah, I think that's probably smart. I mean, we've seen Do AC kind of get that marketing arm kind of get defunded, and then it was back, and it's kind of confusing even what's going on, and the advertising's been kind of half-assed. So yeah, a big part of it's marketing. I think you're right. And then also just in the book, in Boardwalk Playground, I think you're pretty matter-of-fact about the current state of Atlantic City, but you're also pretty optimistic about the future. So where do you see Atlantic City in 10 or 20 years, and what role do you think the gaming industry will play in that?
I think the gaming industry is going to be a lot smaller, and I honestly don't know what direction it's going to go into. I wish I was insightful enough to be able to see what the next development could be. I just think that there has to be something. And if you look at the city at any number of places, you could see that, well, if they continued going in that direction, it wasn't going to work out. And we saw that most recently in the 70s where, hey, if we keep on doing what we're doing, it's not going to work out. They brought casinos in, totally changed everything, huge shift. And I think we're on the cusp of another shift like that, and I don't know which way it goes. I've absolutely no idea. And yeah, I wish I was smarter and I could tell you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to go somewhere. I mean, just being a beach town, it's too convenient. It's not necessarily valuable in terms of what the property costs right now, but in terms of just sort of access and whatever history, there's so much value to the city and to the area that you'd think it's just going to bounce back in some way.
Yeah.
I think, I'm on this podcast, I tend to be a bit more optimistic about Atlantic City's future than Craig is, I think. And I think just the way I look at it is that hopefully the only way for Atlantic City to go right now is up, considering that it's kind of so far down right now. I mean, it's number one foreclosure rate in the country. It's highest taxes in the whole country. It's, the job market's terrible there. It's gone through so many hardships that hopefully, I mean, it's hard for me to imagine it being much worse in the future, but I mean, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and I think eventually somebody will find a way, as long as the taxes and everything doesn't strangle it before it can get off the ground. So right. That's where you need the municipal partnership, and you need some leaders to emerge in the legislature and in the city to say, look, we need to do something. This is people's lives here. We have to do something about this.
Yeah, and I mean, it's tough right now, obviously, because right now they're just trying to cling to that lifeboat and, and stay afloat. So it's hard to have somebody come in and be a visionary when they're trying to cut costs, cut jobs, wherever they can, and stay afloat.
It's hard to really be a visionary and think about the future when you're being walked up the stairs to the gallows. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
I've kind of got I've got my surfing metaphor too, where it's like, or even like boogie boarding, where you're trying to catch a wave, and you just miss that wave. You don't just keep on trying to head to shore. You go back out and try to get the next wave. And I think we've kind of reached that point in the past 2 years where it's like, yeah, the casino gaming wave has moved on. Other people have caught that wave now. We're not catching it anymore. Let's go look for another wave. Let that wave go. We rode it for a little bit. Now we're not riding it. Need a new wave.
And I think that's something that AC's been pretty good at in the past, although maybe not the fastest at finding that next wave, but they've certainly found it eventually. So just sort of an upbeat, maybe more upbeat way to end it is, as an AC native, do you think there's anything really that tourists just totally miss out on when they go to visit AC? Is there anything that we should be going out of our way to check out?
Oh yeah, there's a ton of stuff. First of all, you've got all of Cape May, Ocean City, all that stuff. But my family, we went down, we spent the morning doing the dolphin and whale watching tour. We got to see real dolphins. Then we went up to the Cape May Zoo, which was really awesome and is free. It's unbelievable, though it's nice to leave a donation, totally free. You can have so much fun there. So, I could see doing the day doing that, maybe doing some more adult stuff at night. And if you don't have kids and want to do stuff like that, there's just so much to do in the area. Even renting a boat, going out fishing. There's just a lot of stuff to do, and I would try it.
Yeah, I mean, again, just the sort of natural advantages that Atlantic City has, just to be able to take advantage of that stuff, I think people don't do when they're shut inside a casino.
So as visitors, what do you guys do?
Spend the vast majority of our time in the Bally's, Bally's, Caesars, Wild West for the most part.
I mean, I think our story is that we got into what originally drew us to Atlantic City is we just happened to be the right age. Like we turned 21, and that was like right on the cusp, like where Atlantic City was kind of still the only game in town as far as gambling goes. So we have a lot of memories, or at least I have a lot of memories of going up there kind of 2005, 2006 all the time with friends and gambling and having a good time. But, as we've been talking about over the last hour, it's something that, even people that are 5 years younger than we are, it hasn't been that way at all. I mean, they might never have gone to Atlantic City in the first place because, right now where I live in Maryland, I can go to Maryland Live, I can go to the Horseshoe, I can soon go to MGM National Harbor. And so it's just, I don't know, it's, Atlantic City for us is just a place of all these great memories and nostalgia, and we still have a great time when we go, but yeah, they're going to have to reinvent themselves.
I mean, I think the one thing I've noticed the last couple times I've gone is just like you mentioned, Tropicana, Harrah's, Borgata do a great job of offering pretty close to the Vegas resort experience as far as, shows, shopping, gambling, restaurants, and they have it all in one place. And,
nightlife.
Yeah, and they do that all pretty well. And I think I'm starting to sort of realize, like, oh, hey, this is not just some place where you go and you drop some money in a video poker machine and then head back home. Like, there actually is a lot going on. I mean, I knew that, but I just never really took advantage of it, I don't think, until the last couple of years.
Yeah. So I think you guys nailed it.
So I think we're ready to wrap up here, unless you have anything else to add, Dr. Dave.
No, great questions. Thanks for letting me ramble. It's kind of fun. I don't always get to do that, so maybe I ramble too much.
Thank you very much for coming on our show. I mean, you are, obviously Atlantic City means a lot to you growing up there, and it made sense for us, especially with the Taj closing and with your background there to try to have you on. And thanks so much for taking time out of your Saturday night to get on and talk to us.
Thank you guys for having me on, and also thank you for doing the podcast. And believe in Atlantic City.
So you can find Dr. Dave at Dr. Dave 702 on Twitter, which I think you actually recently changed, right?
Yeah, so originally my Twitter thing started. I just started the UNLV gaming account to do official Center for Gaming Research stuff, but then I would also just start tweeting personal stuff at people. And I figured, well, I'm going to split. So the UNLV gaming is now only official stuff, and now the Dr. Dave 702 is all my personal stuff. I'm just trying to keep the two separate.
Okay, so
although sometimes I slip up and do the wrong one.
Yeah, I've definitely posted from the wrong account quite a few times. So those are the two Twitter accounts to look for. dgschwartz.com is the website.
Yeah, so the website's where you can find all my links to all my articles and also about the books if you'd like something a little bit more long form. The books are always fun.
And speaking of books, your latest book is Tales from the Pit, Casino Table Games, Managers in Their Own Words. Obviously, we've talked quite a bit about Boardwalk Playground, the making, unmaking, and remaking of Atlantic City. You can find both of those on Amazon.com. I don't know if there's a better place where you want people to go buy them than Amazon.
Nah, Amazon's great. Amazon is great. And so the Tales from the Pit, even though I did most of the interviews in Atlantic City, a lot of the folks I talked in Vegas, a lot of the folks I talked to also worked in Atlantic City. So there's a lot of good Atlantic City stuff in there. And there are some really, and those are basically the pit bosses and the casino managers, and they had some really interesting stories about everything, including Atlantic City.
Right. And for me, if you're interested at all in the history of Atlantic City and you really like kind of short form, like 2 or 3 page chapters or about different topics of Atlantic City, I really do think Boardwalk Playground is fantastic. I mean, the length of the articles for each article are great for me. It gives me kind of a wide view of all kinds of topics in Atlantic City history, which there really is a lot of Atlantic City history. So I highly recommend it to anyone who's interested in the city.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you. That's great.
Thanks a lot for coming on. It was definitely an honor to have you on the podcast.
Hopefully we can do it when there's some positive news and something opens or reopens.
Yeah, we'll have to try to do it again in a few months. Thanks so much again.
Awesome.